Hey kids, are you planning on doing an event this year? YouCanEvents.com. YouCanEvent.com is the first place you want to go when organizing your conference or event. With YouCanEvent.com, attract sponsors within 4 days and watch your ticket sales take off by having your event showcased in virtual reality. Virtual reality. It's real. It's virtual. It's a reality. Available on your iPhone, laptop, or tablet. Share the vision of your event, and at the same time, you can get the best price for your venue rentals, furniture, catering, vendors, entertainers, and everything else that you need for your event. Clowns. No, not clowns. YouCanEvents.com. The first place you want to go when organizing your event or conference. All right, let's get to the show. Hey kids, do you have photos on your phone that you haven't had a chance to make prints of yet? Do you have a bunch of photos on social media accounts that you just haven't got around to getting printed yet? But when you get that really perfect picture and you want to turn it into something really special that you can see every day, maybe like Uncle Phil at your son's bar mitzvah getting schnookered on the Manischewitz. Well, turn that photo into a poster at posterburner.com. You can turn your photos into amazing prints. Just imagine walking into your room and seeing that perfect family photo of everyone on the beach in the white shirts and the blue jeans, because that hasn't been done before. Imagine turning your favorite vacation photo into a work of art on your wall, like Aunt Betty and her little tooth piece that she decided to break out for the summer. Or if you need to get a gift for your family and friends, there's nothing better, and there's nothing in the same price range that is going to be as impressive and as meaningful as a custom print. Posterburner.com. It's easy to use and it's affordable, and the quality is truly top notch. And being a photographer here in Southern California, they gave me the opportunity to upload one of my images of a beach here in Southern California. They did aerial photography of. And they made me a 24 by 36 inch print of that, and I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. And they make amazing posters. And when they say posters, they don't mean those flimsy toilet paper thickness, that gift wrapping paper thickness paper that you usually get when you buy a poster. This is super thick premium photo paper. And you can get your 24 by 36 movie poster size for under $20. That's right, under $20. That's less than the price of a movie. And they also make premium canvases, metal prints, decals, stickers, banners, and more. I went onto their site here, and if you type in posterburner.com/WonderDog, you're going to get your 10% discount right here. Boom, you got it. They have canvases, they have decals, they have banners, they have metal prints, which I've made several times. It's very impressive with a car on that. Ornaments, mouse pads, postcards, flyers, yard signs, and shirts. You get your custom made Crypto the Wonder Dog shirt put right on there. And if you don't have anybody to make something for you, send your images over to the experts there at posterburner.com, and their graphic designers will create something amazing for you. Photo restoration. Take your old photos of that have been ripped up and shoved into coffee cans and shoe boxes and ripped off of pictures here and there, and get them turned back into something that you can appreciate and pass on for generations to come. Okay, go to posterburner.com/WonderDog today and get your additional 10% off your order. Not only that, but Posterburner is one of the first online merchants to accept Bitcoin. That's right, kids, Bitcoin. Break out your Bitcoin wallet and buy your poster today. That discount applies to everything they have to offer. Again, that's posterburner.com/WonderDog. Get it today. Get your poster up, and the first person to send in a picture of your poster from posterburner.com is going to get something really cool from the Wonder Dog. All right? Take a picture of it, post it on our tag us on Instagram, our just email it to me. That's fine. We'll put it in the show. Okay, here we go. All right, that's it. You guys ready to start the show? All right, let's get to the show. We haven't done a show.
Oh, we haven't?
We haven't done a show.
True.
Read it.
It's all my fault. While I was trying to wrap my head around this particular topic, I kept feeling.
Oh, you already had the topic in mind.
I had a topic in mind. Well, as you know, at any given point in time, we're doing sort of we use the term deep dive, and I can't listen to it anymore, so I have to come up with a different term for it. But,
okay.
So at any given point in time, we're looking at a specific subject matter for an allocation, and right now this security token topic has been fairly big.
Yeah.
And
what
so
is there such a thing? There isn't such a thing? What's
there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it always comes back to language. If people like to use it and they keep using it, okay, it's a thing in that sense.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
So
what do you feel about that? Because you've guided people, a lot of people who think they have a utility, and you're like, no, it's a security, right? They insist they have a utility.
Again, you have to look at it on a very different viewpoint. So,
yeah.
From one perspective, as I mentioned earlier, it's all of these things are inherently software, right? So
Yeah.
To lock yourself into a certain paradigm is always dangerous, but specifically if you do this with software, and then, as you also know, you got to see the context. Is this the context where you need to be moving these things, these virtual assets around the United States or worldwide, or can you fractionalize it, etc.? So there's no clear-cut answer to that. But what we did is we looked at any platform, or probably not all of them as of yet, but at a good number of them to identify, okay, is there a utility to the platform so that they're trying to do this? So they're trying to create quote-unquote security tokens.
Yeah. All right.
So
you came up with something, right?
Yeah, as usual.
Okay. All right. Well, let's check this out. Let's get right in here. Security tokens.
Right. We kind of already started on that, but if you look for this term right now and just trying to get down to the taxonomy, which is the next slide, the first thing you'll actually find is the way the term used to be used, right? So a security token used to be a physical device, and so that gave you access to some resource, like you might have something from your bank, for example.
Okay.
And so they consider this thing to be a security token, and or the number that this thing is creating is a security token. So that's why the Wikipedia entry, when you go there, will give you this definition for the time being.
Really? Okay. All right.
So for people that want to just look it up, they're going to be very confused. That look at this in a blockchain context. Anyway, but coming back to first principles, let's just look into what a security is from a traditional perspective. So you got debt securities, so that's your banknotes, your bonds, and your debentures. And you got
what is that word?
It's difficult to pronounce, so why don't you?
Debentures.
Yeah, so it's about companies.
Debentures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Debentures.
Is there a B in there? Is it a B? Is it silent?
Yeah.
Like debt? Is it supposed to be like? Is it a
derivative
of debt?
Yeah, it's an instrument that companies use to borrow money.
All right. Okay.
Maybe I should have used that. An instrument that companies use to borrow money.
Banknotes, bonds, and instruments.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then you got your usual equity securities, so common stocks. You got your derivatives, so futures, forwards, options, swaps, etc.
Okay.
So that's from a traditional perspective, those are all securities, right? And just to put some framework around this, I put some basic numbers up for the stock market to give this some feel for what's the size of the current security markets. So as an example, here's NASDAQ, which was founded in 1971, and they have some 3,000 listings and a total of more than 10 trillion as of today. And if you compare this to what's listed on CoinMarketCap right now, CoinMarketCap has like 1,700 some listings, and it's a combined market cap of about 266 billion, so about 3% of what you have on NASDAQ now as
crazy.
a comparison. And that's why this particular topic seems to be of a lot of interest for a lot of people, because you could make, and a lot of people do this, make an argument, hey, if we came up with a token system that provides the same function as a NASDAQ, as an example, but takes away a lot of the brokerage fees and other detriments that are in between people that want to trade and exchange that asset, maybe we can move a lot of that 10 trillion onto a token-based market system.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the main motivations, and that's I thought it might make sense to just mention what the current equity markets by this particular example look like. So then the one thing you want to delineate the quote-unquote utility, the security token from is what everybody is using right now in their vernacular, which is the utility token. And typically there's 3 scenarios that are being made up. That means that the token that's being created is needed to operate some form of decentralized application, an app, or it represents a stake of sorts, i.e. a membership, or it's used for consumption on a platform. Right?
Okay.
So this is not a security token in that sense. So, and then there's a bunch of platforms that some of which just recently launched, some of them are still being built. So I'm going to talk about some of those that we looked at, and what the particulars are, and what I find useful and what I don't find so useful. And then we'll try to kind of classify this overall. And that's always what we do when we look into an investment, right? You want to see, okay, should you allocate to any of these particular platforms to begin with later on will then also help you to judge whether or not any of the assets creating on those platforms will have any future in terms of creating a return for your fund.
Yeah.
So let's start with Polymath, because they've been most prominent, mainly because of the time when they raised funds. They raised about 69,000 ethers last year, and at the time, actually it was at the beginning of the year when the ICO finished. At the time, there was a lot of money. If they had liquidated this, would have been a little shy of $100 million.
Wow.
But if they held on to this, as you know, because of Ether going down from like its high of 1,400 to what it's now,
400.
Yeah. Then they probably hold significantly less. But again, the only reason why I always bring this up is because every single time I read any of the reporting about any of these projects, it's always being reported in US dollars. And and obviously that makes very little sense. So we actually just tasked someone to narrow this down for those virtual assets that raised Ether, so that we know what they actually hold on their balance sheets.
Oh, really?
As of today. Yeah,
okay.
Because it's not easy to come by. I mean, there's ways, but it's not automated, unfortunately.
No? Okay.
Right. But again, it comes back to any popular media reporting this in any kind of fiat amount that provides very little value to anybody, right? Because it could be that, it could be much more, or it could be much less. So why mention it at all? You should always just mention, okay, they raised these particular virtual assets, so most likely Ether, in this particular amount at this particular time, so then you can do your own educated guess, basically, right?
Yeah.
So you just look back at the virtual asset price at the time and what it's now, and then
and fluctuates all over the board.
If you want to do a simple math calculation, you just assume, okay, they liquidated 50% of that right now to be prudent, and then they hold half of that in Ether still.
Yeah.
And you're probably closer to the truth than whatever number in USD or any other fiat you were provided by that outlet. So it's an issue I constantly come across every day. Anyway, so Polymath is Ethereum based, and they they issued a KYC token, so a know your client token. The idea with a lot of these platforms, as we'll see, is you need to be able to identify the buyer of the equity at the end of the day, right? Yeah. Under any jurisdiction, you need to know who you're selling this equity for, and then there's also number restrictions that we'll get into. But you will see that with, I think, all of these platforms, I'm pretty sure. So they do the typical know your client intake, and oftentimes also the accredited investor check for United States investors. So it's quite a bit of documentation required, but no different than for most of the exchanges, specifically in the United States. And that's also something I think we should talk about. So
yeah,
they're setting up an ATS, an alternative trading system, which is something that's regulated under U.S. security laws, and they're trying to introduce something that they call, I think there's a letter missing. Is this SD20? I want to say it's STR20. Anyways, it's easy to find. I think it's STR20 token standard.
STR20 token?
Okay. I think so. I think we'll mention it later again. I think it might be a typo. It doesn't really matter because there's a lot of other companies that propose certain token standards, but a standard doesn't come around by you declaring it's one. It's a standard comes about by people actually employing it across different platforms. And that's something we haven't yet seen, and with Polymath there's nothing yet functional anyway, so we'll wait and see whether or not it's going to be a standard. Are you trying to look it up?
Yeah.
It's STR20, yes? No?
I don't see STR20.
Okay. Well, we'll put it to the show notes, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Very good.
It's one of those. They get the point.
Yeah. As I said, the specifics are not important in this particular case. We'll see if that even becomes a thing.
Yeah.
Wait and see. Okay. So moving on, Harbor has been quite prominent. They also have an ERC20 compatible system, which, as you know, is the Ethereum request for comment standard that the majority of tokens have been generated on, about 700 some actively traded at the moment. And so this way, the large benefit of that, and most people just recitate this without realizing what this means. The large benefit is that you can hold it within the existing Ethereum ecosystem. So specifically, you can hold it with any wallet that could hold Ether as well. Okay. And potentially can then also be traded on any exchange that supports the ERC20 standards. That's why this is relevant. But obviously, there's other considerations. They are trying to create a platform that then allows transfers between whitelisted individuals that meet the appropriate trading requirements without knowing yet the specifics. Or actually, well, I started diving into this, but I don't think they have figured everything out at this moment in time.
Okay.
So, but essentially, it's a framework to enforce the appropriate security regulations. So, as before, KYC and know your client and anti-money laundering policies, and potentially also all the tax rules, etc.
Oh yeah.
And so they're trying to apply a framework where you have regulatory compliance, but it's across the platform as far as I understand the platform so far. So what that means is, even though it's an ERC20 token, once they are live, you would only be able to exchange the token with anybody else that's already on the platform and already whitelisted at this point in time. Right? So it's a pretty centralized approach. Then what kind of irked me, I think I read a quote from Josh Sustany, the CEO over there, that he was saying at another article that compliance is centralized at Harbor, and he was mentioning that's a little different than some of the other companies that are doing this, that are completely walled garden, he says. But at the same time, he was also mentioning that they somehow can stop a trade from occurring and or issue new shares, so to speak.
Really?
So that, to me at least, would be a red flag. But again, I'm coming from an from an open source perspective.
Yeah.
Right. From what's a token supposed to do, but
Mhm.
we'll get to that. So I got my friends over at Swarm Fund. I've known the CEO there for some 10 or more years, maybe 20.
They've been around for that?
No, but I've known the
Okay.
gentleman who's heading this project over there.
Okay.
And so this platform is actually live, although they only have 7 listings at the last time I checked, which was a couple of days ago, and with very little activity. So one thing that most of these platforms offer is basically that you can issue a token, not just list a token, but also issue a token, create a token.
You can create a token on their platform?
Yeah, so that's a security token.
Really?
Yeah, so that's one of the functions, and I should have mentioned that earlier because
Okay.
I think it's also
And
true
so they
for the
can-
previous.
Oh, so they
platforms.
can do it on Polymath too?
I think that's
Polymath and Harbor?
That's a good question. I should have structured that accordingly. So I'll make another table and we'll that speaks to that,
Okay.
that we can put in the show notes, because that's a good point. I had that thought and then consequently forgot that.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, we're looking for a few other things too.
Now, when
right?
when you say that people can create, like anyone can go on there and create their own token, or is there criteria to be?
Well, one criteria is that you pay them typically.
Really? Okay, so you have to pay them to create the token.
And it's not insignificant what it costs.
Really?
Yeah. And
Why is that?
well, part of this is because, well, most of these are rent-seeking systems, right? And
Okay.
that has to do with, well, they want to make money, but on the other hand, a lot of these compliance features that you need to have cost you money, right? So if I take you onto my platform, I have to check KYC, have to know you, quote unquote. That's most often, with very exception, an external service that you, meaning in this case the platform, is paying for.
Mhm.
And if it's an accredited investor check, then it's even more expensive.
Really? Okay.
I forgot what the actual costs were, but I want to say it's like $15 to check whether or not you're an accredited investor.
$15.
So that
Okay.
what it comes down to. And
Okay.
so there's some manual procedures that you could do this. You know all the requirements. I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
Unless you're a registered fund of sorts and you're investing as an individual, you need to make XYZ money, which is $200,000 a year consecutive for the last 2 years. You need or have an income or liquid asset without your home of $1 million. So
Okay.
you would have to provide the documentation to the platform, or there's external aggregators that will provide you with the platform with that particular information. But again, that's not free.
Yeah. Okay.
And either you maintain a customer service department for that, and or you integrate with someone else that provides you with that solution.
Okay.
Because otherwise you won't be able to actually move anything on the platform.
Once you create it, you can't.
Yeah, exactly. And so think about it this way. It's like in order to create an actual marketplace, you should have 10, 20, 100,000 people on the platform, right? So
Yeah.
if we just use the criteria that I just mentioned and just assume you're paying $10 to onboard someone, right? So by the time you got 100 people on the platform,
Wow.
you already spend $1 million,
Uh-huh.
right? So you sort of have to make that back and maintain, and then there's reporting on all of those. But we'll get a little bit more into that, as fascinating as this might be or not. So same with Swarm Fund. So they're also proposing their own token standard. What's hard to find is they're proposing this on the Stellar blockchain. So Stellar is kind of a niche blockchain that's popular across kind of financial institutions and other people that want to run a private blockchain. So it's not a public blockchain.
Okay.
So it's not an Ethereum. It's not a Bitcoin.
All right.
Then there's a platform called Securities, and they chose kind of to be a white label solution. So you can put your own branding on there and start issuing security tokens from there.
Wow. Okay.
And so it kind of has this launchpad function, if you will, right? And it provides supposedly software where you can for the life of the token, then check who is the current holder of that token, which for a lot of the security tokens or public companies for that matter is gonna extremely important, if not necessary, obviously. What's interesting about this to some degree is the team that's running this, they are actually a venture fund, and so the same team also put out this particular platform and started pushing out a couple of their own projects. So we'll see how widespread adoption this will have because of that.
Okay.
Then we've been talking to these guys quite a bit. Very intelligent, smart team. Have been developing this particular solution for quite some time. Filed some IP protection for it as well. And they do very extensive identity KYC management for a lot of countries, which most of the other platforms don't provide at this point in time, as far as I can tell. They're agnostic to any particular blockchain, so they're not trying to introduce their own standard, although they use some XML standards that not well known and understood, not even by me, even though I'm sort of an expert in XML. But there's a standard in security that you are using probably right now when you have a browser open that keeps your identity within the browser across different sites.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's called SAM, secure something authentication. I put it in the show notes, but again, it's nerdy. But I like the nerdy part of that, of the XML part, and they have a good eye for that and utilizing some of the existing standards, which I appreciate, because I think a lot of these projects that we were looking at before, they don't look out there in the wild to see what already exists. Ideally, where you want to interface with existing standards that are there. And since a lot of these platforms, actually all of these platforms, require the identification of an individual, you should be looking first and foremost towards how this is already being done, has been done for a long time, and utilize this as much as possible. So I think that's a pretty good approach. For the most part, this is a kind of a do-it-yourself platform. So you're the same as with some of the others. You create your own quote-unquote security token. Actually, this particular platform also will let you create a utility token if you wanted to. So once you start going through the process, it will actually ask you initially, are you creating a security token or a utility token?
Really? So you can tell them right away.
Yeah, but again, I mean,
go through checks.
There's limitations to that, obviously, and they have customer service, presumably, that will then try to educate you. I assume I wouldn't suggest that anybody that hasn't done this before actually does their own picking. Yeah. Even though it's do it yourself. And so the most interesting part, most likely, is that they are working on application programming interfaces that would then allow exchanges to list these tokens as well. So by the extension of using their platform to check your particular identity to see whether or not this particular virtual asset can be traded from you to another individual on their platform, so on a centralized exchange for that matter.
And when you're saying do it yourself, are you talking about where you would have your IT department develop this for you, or is this something that people with very little knowledge of anything could actually do it themselves?
I wouldn't say very little knowledge.
So it's not a drag and drop type of a...
It's sort of drag and drop.
Oh, it is.
It's a lot, but it will walk you through procedure, but you'll still obviously have to create the prerequisites on your end, right? So you still have to set up your wallet address, etc., right? But
if somebody had like a general knowledge of what's going on, they would be able to do it.
Yeah, and I don't remember for sure right now, because the obvious thing is they don't work as a custodian. So it means if you're issuing a quote-unquote security token and then you want to sell it, most likely you don't want to be responsible. They certainly don't want to be responsible for holding that, right? They want to make themselves a honeypot of sorts, right? Yeah. And so you'll still need to then also log in a security provider for you on that particular end.
Which would be, what's an example
like
of that?
King and Trust, for example.
Okay.
There's very few at the moment, and it's very expensive at the moment. It's like 0.1% of your assets that they're holding. So it's
is that a new market for companies to become custodians?
Yeah, it's a big problem for the industry at large.
Is it?
Yeah, because there's so few, and so few that actually it's not hard to do. I mean, you need to have a vault and cold storage. We talked about wallets quite a bit.
Yeah.
But you also need to then have the insurance, and as I said, because there's a limited number of existing custodians that have all these prerequisites, specifically that are insured and or have that large balance sheets to actually ensure that the liquidity for that asset is there, whether or not they actually can produce it at the end of the day. So if you give them $500 million in Ether or Bitcoin, you want to make sure, or needless to say, that the balance sheets reflect that, and that this is not your mom and pop bank down the road who maybe has a balance sheet of 50 million, right? Because if someone literally would be breaking into their vault, just grabs this and has the private keys to drain that, you'll never see any of those funds back from that bank.
Incredible.
It's limited. Anyhow, it's probably too much detail at this point in time.
But that's good. I mean, that's good information.
We didn't touch on this with the other platforms because we didn't quite go down the rabbit hole that deep, because at one point in time the way we work is you come across a few things that add up to this is a no-go, as far as compared to either the other solutions that we have seen or in aggregate of the problems that you're incurring on this platform at this moment in time. That's not a good application to use, and from an allocator perspective, not a good way to recommend or allocate to, right?
Okay.
And that's obviously why we are looking at this space. So then you got kind of the big one that has been making the most noises, T0, right? That's our friends over at Overstock. That's a subsidiary of Overstock.
Wow.
They've been very early in this particular space, and so they're building what they call a security token trading platform. And so far they raised about 114 million. They just extended their ICO period for another couple of days. I think it's going on for another 3-4 days now.
Okay.
And they also announced just another big allocation from another large venture fund as well. They created their own what they call security token, which is ERC20 based, but again they're using their own trading platform, right? So that the intention seems to be that all of the trading is just happening on T0 itself, and so their token is then gonna pay token holders 10% of adjusted gross revenues that's supposed to occur on this particular platform.
Wow,
it's very US focused, it seems, at the moment still. And there were numerous reports that the FCC, because of that, probably the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commissions, is currently looking into their setup.
Really?
Yeah, so they requested.
Do you see any red flags? Do you yourself see anything that you would be like, yeah, that's a red flag?
We would like to see more development being done already, right? So it's much easier to see whether or not something has merit if you actually build something first. I mean, that's the case with a lot of these projects, obviously, and this is no exception to where they start raising a lot of funds before they actually build something, right? And as a technology investor, you typically don't take those projects too serious, right? You go through your typical steps of, hey, we're allocating $50,000 to that, build up the proof of concept to show that you can do this, and then you can do that, then you do a Series A, and from there you do an advanced proof of concept and you build some form of alpha, right? And so when you ask me, do I see a problem with that? That's the problem that I I see,
Yeah.
right? And so that it then in a way extends to the regulators
Yeah.
as well, because if you're just taking in funds from people but they don't immediately get anything, that's always an issue. In this particular case, they actually registered the funds with the SEC already, so it's a little bit different. So it's a Reg D. It's a Reg D. Keep forgetting. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
But so you'll find it if you just look for the SEC registration. So, but what's interesting is then the last thing that they announced, and I couldn't find anything to actually confirm this, but because of the seeming interest of regulators, they decided to move on to Start Engine. And Start Engine is a semi-local in Santa Monica here platform, which does crowdfunding, and it's all, they call it regulated ICOs. And they came kind of from a different background, where they raised money for building batteries and building electric cars and scooters and whatnot. So it's rather small amounts on their platform. They had some 100+ crowdfunding events on there. Very few of them seem to have anything to do with tokens or blockchain, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
I think they're trying to make a foray in the space, but so I was just looking before this recording at their current listings, and it's a couple $100,000 maybe for those projects, and I could find 2 blockchain related ones. Again, not this is anything negative. It's just the context that they're also trying to build building a jump off platform to it seems to create a token, but there's no trading going on there at the moment that I can find.
Yeah.
So then the obvious one, right? Let's move on to the actual regulations. And needless to say, if you're creating a token, you're essentially exposed worldwide, right? So you got a piece of software that presumably anybody can access anywhere in the world. And so I'll just look at some example regulations here. So this is kind of interesting because Wyoming actually created a bill to define what a utility token is. So by definition, so to speak, you can exclude anything from being a security token by just complying to those regulations. But again, only if you're in Wyoming. But
only Wyoming.
But the only reason why I'm bringing this up is what if other states, which seems to be preferable, adopt the same thing, right? So there's in the United States there's this paradigm of, hey, if one state comes up with a useful regulation, other states will start adopting that. And it's typically a process that will take a decade, unfortunately. But
has anyone that you know of, any other states, looked at it?
Well, the initial move towards the blockchain, I believe, came from Delaware, and so Wyoming expanded on it. And started then to specifically define this utility token bill. But again, as a reflection on the current platforms, it's simply that, hey, there's a lot of movement, right? So if I write certain rules into my platform, I need to also make sure that I then will be able to change those, and that's somewhat of a problem, right? Specifically, tokens are, if you're looking at it from a blockchain perspective, are supposed to be immutable, right? So I give you a token, and it comes with these particular rights. So if I issue a token, and let's say I issue a token under the laws of Wyoming, and I tell you it's a utility token, but under your definition it's a security token, then I have a problem. So I cannot deal with it on my particular platform, or vice versa. But the larger point is simply, it's very difficult at this point in time to tell whether or not the rules that you're implementing in your particular platform will stand the test of time. So the most important thing to ask, if this is the route you want to go, either as someone trying to issue a quote-unquote security token, or is someone trying to allocate to it, whether or not this paradigm will hold true, or whether or not you're going to tie yourself to a particular paradigm that's no longer be useful in a year from now or 2 years from now, depending on what your usage and your investment horizon is, right?
Yeah.
And again, this is just one example. I'm going to do one more and then we'll move on, because you could do this until the cows come home, obviously, because, I mean, other countries, so the next example would be Switzerland as example. They have different definitions of what a security is altogether,
Okay.
so that don't necessarily jive with what the Securities and Exchange Commission defines as a security.
Okay.
And needless to say, if you have a platform that supposedly is accessible by investors and token issuers worldwide, you need to account for all of those. But how do you account for it if the rules and regulations are already different outside of just applying to you and or the asset? You have a combination of the two, right? So the rules apply either to you and or the asset. So what I mean by this, so this is the Swiss regulator, right? So the Swiss regulator decided, hey, we have clear-cut buckets here. So we got, on one hand, all the payment functions with Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero. And then we have clear-cut utility coins, tokens, which are Ether and EOS. And then we got assets. And assets are shares in companies, and if it provides dividends, then it's a security token. So they're already very proactive, which can't be said for the United States. But so they provided a framework. So if you're looking outside of the country and to one of those platforms, well, you don't know, in my opinion now, if, let's say, you buy a virtual asset from over there, that over there in Europe is clear cut, it's a utility, and then someone here tells you, no, it's not. It's like, okay, so what regulation are you using? Are you using the regulation of that particular asset, or the regulation of this particular person that is holding it, or a combination of the two? And you can make up a lot of different examples. That's my only point here. I don't have a perfect answer, and there probably is none to be had, right?
Yeah, I would think that it would be wherever you're from, right? Wherever you live.
Well, what if that asset represents a share in a real estate holding? So, and all the buildings in the trust happen to be in Zurich.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. I don't know how that you would be able to apply any rules from the U.S. onto that.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know either. I mean, I could probably figure it out, but again, it's a big, complex issue to address that I'm not entirely certain, and there was really not a lot to go by on the existing attempts to build these platforms, how this issue is going to be solved and if it's going to be solvable. I think they kind of limited themselves to a couple of anecdotal examples of how we can tokenize an existing real estate fund in the United States as an example that's often being brought up.
Yeah, I see that happening a lot. I mean, especially on LinkedIn, I see a lot more people incorporating blockchain with real estate, or they put it in their title. So, is that what they're trying to do?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, to us, it's semi-interesting because it's not much related to technology, right? I'll focus more on technology investing, and that's why we're interested in the blockchain. But again, I mean, it could be that this is going to be a big push and leads to actually tokenizing a lot of these assets. I would just caution everybody to actually understand what they are doing. And you want to understand it before you make that commitment to any of these particular platforms. Yeah. So, because the question then really becomes is, so you got all these existing exchanges for virtual assets already. So you got more than 200 right now, and 20 of those, as you remember from our other chat, actually matter in any shape or form in terms of the volume that they're creating. And most, if not all of these exchanges, at least the ones that we use in the matter, they already perform know your client checks, etc. So the question then becomes, if this is an interesting market space, what prevents any of those exchanges to just bolt on the additional rules that they need to perform to then trade the additional assets? So then, yes, those other launch pad platforms become relevant in terms of just creating that token. But again, it doesn't seem such a big leap for a centralized exchange to then start offering the same service if there should be volume. And a lot of those exchanges, as you probably know, have made a lot of money over the past year.
Oh man,
they were the largest beneficiaries of this particular market space so far, because the main application of tokens and coins right now is speculation, and most of the speculation is happening on centralized exchanges. Not that anybody believes that they will stand the test of time. Obviously, that's a different issue. But for the time being, if you were to launch a niche platform to launch a security token, as soon as it becomes interesting, you will likely have well-capitalized competitors that will bolt on those particular checks that you build to the existing platform. And guess what? They already have half of, well, probably not half, but they already have a good percentage of what they need. And more importantly, they already have the audience. So that's funny. I mean, at the end of the day, you're doing this to create liquidity. And so that's where you have liquidity right now for virtual assets at the centralized exchanges.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's just one example of the existing limitations. So it always comes back to know where you want to be at the end of the day. If you just go to Coinbase Pro, they renamed it, but they still list as GDEX as of this morning, at least for the digital asset framework, but this is directly from Coinbase Pro. So they specifically exclude anything that looks like a security. So you wouldn't actually be able, even if you went through one of those launchpads, to later on then list it on Coinbase Pro. And you'll probably find either at all of, or at least most of the US exchange, you'll find that same exemption, because then from an exchange perspective, you have to employ a couple of other regulations that they don't necessarily want to get engaged with, as of now, as my understanding. So again, comes back to liquidity. If you're thinking of selling this to this new security token that you created to a larger audience, just know that certain outlets that already aggregate these audiences won't take it on after you created it. So, and part of this problem, and particular to the US, if you go to the next slide, is all these reporting requirements. I mean, the biggest one is, so if you have more than 2,000 shareholders, you're still reporting as if you went public, as if you were a public company. So all the owners, Sarbanes-Oxley regulation, etc., apply to you as well, quarterly reporting, and it's very expensive. So what you would expect to happen, again, there's no data to go by at this point in time, but that's something we're likely to see, is that you'll have to decide whether or not you initially want to limit the number of people that can participate in your security token sale to this particular number of people. And so you're just creating that many assets. So that, when you do the math, will then also limit you overall in the amount of capital that you can raise.
Oh, really?
Well, think about it this
well,
way.
Yeah, I guess
there's
so,
only so many people that will give you $50,000 for your share of whatever. Right? So you'll see that this is most likely, in most cases, limited to sub $20 million investments. And that you can raise, and so that leaves you basically with the existing rules under the Job Act. So it's not more interesting in this particular sense. You might as well go that route and not employ any of the new platforms that are being created.
Wow.
So I looked at some of the costs. So you got financial reporting. If you have to report as a public company, you got a lot of internal controls and then legal and accounting. So it will likely cost you anywhere between $1 million and $1.9 million
Oh my God.
a year, according to the numbers that I found. That's something that Pricewaterhouse published just recently.
Man.
So that's going to become prohibitive for most projects
they,
out there. So
they can't afford
and that's
that.
a decision essentially that you need to make before you start creating your security token, right? So you need to be aware that either I limit myself.
Cost you a lot of money.
Well, I limit myself.
Yeah.
Or I need to be prepared to set up all those requirements under U.S. reporting regulations.
Unbelievable.
So there's a lot to think about, and it seems to me that when these platforms are being promoted, that these particular aspects are not being pointed out. It sounds very easy. It's like, hey, you got a little office park. Hey, why don't you create some tokens for that? Like, well, wait a minute. So the rules will still all apply to you. So just make sure that you at least know the basics, and you'll be able to ask the right questions. So in summary, that kind of leaves us with, okay, when these platforms, and by extension then the security tokens, quote unquote, that they generate are going to be useful. And for now, my perception is it's going to be useful for very small number of projects out there.
Yeah.
And then the question becomes, okay, if that's true already, how many people will be interested in subscribing to any of those platforms? And how many exchanges, if that's a possibility, will want to take on these tokens? Because that's already a problem right now for the exchanges that aggregate the large audience.
Yeah.
As you have heard that Binance is asking our projects now to put up $6 million just to be listed. So that's already prohibitive for 99% of those quote
6 million.
Yes. And so
now, is that a deposit or is that
no? It's a listing fee.
That's a listing fee.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Wow. Yeah, and the other ones are partially cheaper, but then again, most won't just list the security token. So you're likely left with whatever audience those niche platforms are able to aggregate.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so I would caution everybody that wants to go down this route and issue one to first understand, okay, what little bucket do you fall in, or is it a big bucket, or can you find something else? And so far, I don't find that the platforms that are out there that some of them raised enormous amount of money, are able to explain why this should be a scalable model at this point. Because at the end of the day, what I would expect is that all the qualities that you need for the transfer of securities need to be inherent in the token itself. That's why 2-3 of these projects kind of trying to create this particular standard. I just find it not very believable today that someone would just say, oh yeah, that sounds like a useful standard, I'm going to adopt that. It takes a lot more, and it's typically not driven by one particular organization, right? So a lot of these things are inherently centralized. I would venture to say that someone in the developer community will come up with something instead, and then open source this, and from there you can attach all the qualities to the virtual assets that you need to by law, and you put this into the code. And then on the other end, you have an individual where the identity management will carry all the features that you need to have to be able to purchase the token, if that makes any sense. Yeah. And so that's the only, in my opinion, scalable solution. Whenever you centralize it, you're running in a lot of obstacles. The main one being the chance at this point in time that you become market maker for any of these assets aren't very likely.
Yeah. Is Coinbase, what is that? Is that an exchange?
Coinbase Pro is an exchange. So remember, GDEX was the exchange, and they had the bank Coinbase, which is an app, and it was a bank, and so now they renamed the exchange Coinbase Pro instead.
Now, why are there only 4 or 5 tokens?
Because they felt secure that those are in essence currencies.
Okay, and is XRP a currency?
Oh, I could say something very mean right now. Because
I keep hearing, that from when I first got into this, that XRP was going to keep, every week XRP is going to get listed on Coinbase, and it was just
So
we have proof.
So Ripple, the blockchain, is highly centralized. Most of XRP is still owned by the company that created this distributed ledger. Okay. I would venture to say it's not a blockchain. You know how I feel about what a blockchain is. A blockchain is decentralized, and Ripple is not. So it's simply a distributed ledger, and the company still holds most of XRP. So is that a currency? It's as much a currency as if you go to MGM and exchange money for one of their chips, right? Because it's still MGM's property, and so they can still always make some more of that, and they still will hold a lot of that when you leave the casino.
Yeah.
Was this politically correct enough?
Yeah, they will.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Yeah. I don't think it carries a lot of value. It's probably the most overvalued asset listed on the exchanges at this point.
Is it going to get to Coinbase? You think it'll ever get listed on Coinbase?
Yeah, good chance. Yeah. I mean, that comes down to it's a popularity contest of sorts at this point in time for the most part.
Okay.
And it has a lot of good actors in there as well. As a paradigm, it just doesn't seem to be as sound as truly decentralized systems. Always comes back to you shut down the internet. That's the only option to shut down Bitcoin, and that's pretty much true at this point in time for Ethereum, and will be true for the other centralized systems. So the use cases for any of those private blockchains are going to be limited to very particular applications that really only should be run by private entities for particular purposes. But over time, I would say these are niches, and probably won't be worth much.
No.
Again, I could be totally wrong. That's just my bias as a technologist.
Wow. Okay. What else are we working on? What do you got coming next?
What are we coming on next? We still need to put on something about identity. Very important topic still. Okay. I aggregated a lot of information on that topic already at this point in time. Probably at one point in time talk about institutional trading systems.
Okay.
So for institutions get involved because that's something that's needed. Custody in that same context, that's can probably be on the same one. We just started for the first time to look into gaming, and particular new standards 1155.
Okay.
ERC 1155, which is kind of a hybrid standard between unique and fungible assets.
Okay.
And so we're interested in applications that are being developed on top of that right now. So it seems to be pretty applicable to the gaming space, and so. And
are you talking about esports, or are you talking of?
That would be one. So think about
gambling.
Think about the scenario where you can take your virtual asset from one platform to the next. So you play with your same avatar, your same game character, that you play on League of Legends.
Okay.
In one of the other worlds that I don't know of.
Yeah, all those other.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for people that like this particular niche, and there's a lot of them, that has a lot of value, right? If you can be the same character as an example, or you can take certain other virtual assets to the new worlds.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so you've probably seen Ready Player One, right?
Yeah, the movie. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Which is actually a pretty old book.
Is it?
Yeah, it was a cult back
Wow.
I don't know, 20 years ago. But there's a lot of merit, and you can look somehow towards the future, what's going to come there. So it's something we started exploring, so we can. It's an interesting topic. It's very colorful, so we can talk about this sometime. We know that they're building stadiums for esports now, right?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it's getting the nerds are starting to take over. Yeah, they're getting booted out of their mom's basements. They got to go play somewhere else.
There's a lot of excitement around the topic. So,
yeah.
And what you must not forget is like a lot of technology that we have today, and especially in computer power, has been driven by gaming. People it's underappreciated how much of the computing power has been developed specifically for the gaming industry before it became widely available. Yeah. Like if you see like motion detection and things of that nature, the processing powers of graphic cards. It's
I did know the graphics cards because I've been in video editing and stuff, and it was always you always see those, and it was mostly for the gaming world.
Yeah, the commercial application, and then consequently the availability to the mass market at lower prices has been driven a lot by this particular industry, and has done this for decades by now. So that's part of the of our interest to see, okay, there's new standards in gaming that are being developed on the blockchain. How can this be applicable to what else is going to be developed? So our interest is not necessarily limited to how is the standard going to be used in gaming, but then this could be the starting point for using this particular protocol or this particular ERC20 standard in this particular case in other applications.
Yeah.
And it's almost a certainty that this will come down. So it behooves anybody being a technology investor to get into the understanding of these paradigms early. But as I said, we'll talk about this probably on a different podcast.
Good. All right. Well, let's get it going, man. This is fun. And you've got your SoundCloud going up, right? Or is that already going?
Do we have a SoundCloud? Miss Marketing Manager?
We have SoundCloud.
We do? Okay.
You have nothing's posted up there yet? No? Okay. All right. When are you guys planning on doing that? Yeah?
I didn't even know, but okay.
Okay.
I guess we do.
So we're gonna we've burned the bridge behind you. Now you have to do it.
I don't have to do anything. I just walk out here.
All right. Well, it'd be good if you guys did that.
We'll do.
It's apparently a very popular platform for the kids, right? For listening to things.
SoundCloud popular,
very popular. Yeah. Okay. No, I don't. I don't have a SoundCloud account. I'm not that hip. I guess I'm not up.
Put it on the list.
I'll look into it. I'll look into getting a SoundCloud. Does it? All right.
But then maybe after Forbes publishes an article on currency volatilities that part further in the podcast.
Oh, and you just said that your article that you did on DAO came out
on Monday, so a couple days
on Forbes.
Couple of days ago, yeah.
Okay, so Forbes.com, Forbes.
Yeah.
Forbes.com. You have that on there. Okay.
Yeah.
People can look that up.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, we encourage you to, and that'll be in the show notes too, right? All these links and stuff.
If you say so.
Okay. Good. Well, let's do that. so the kids can find it. All right. All right. Well, from Sustany Capital, this has been Crypto the WonderDog with Dean and Christian. Thanks, man.
Good night.
Good talk.